This is Chasing the Cutoff with Troy Ide. Conversations with professional people age 40 and older who balance busy careers with excellence in endurance athletics and extreme sports. From Denver, Colorado, here's Troy Ide.
Welcome to Chasing the Cutoff. This is Troy Ide. I never say this, but I'm supposed to tell you to like and subscribe. And I haven't done that in the 20 episodes of this podcast, but please like and subscribe. We're getting close to the 100 subscriber mark. I'm very pleased about that. We've had some great viewership, and I know our guest is going to catapult us to new heights.
There I go.
I want to thank the encouragement that I've had in the last week or so. Chris Kostman reached out and appreciate your support, director of the Badwater family and a great race director, and Dean Karnazes, which I really appreciate so much. And in that tradition of great leadership in our sport, Phil Lowry is here today. Phil, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. I've listened to your podcast, and I like the direction you go with things, and you are very appealing to someone of my career in ultra running. At my point in my career, I find it very refreshing.
Well, that's because you're so much younger than I am. That's why you can say those things. And here's the thing. So I've been running since 78, and I gather you were a swimmer, and you probably haven't been running as long as I've been running, but you've spent your time probably a lot better than I have, because unlike me, you have amassed, there's really almost no one in the sport who's done more than you have. And in fact, you've done things that no one else has done. You've done the Triple Crown. Is it 4 times?
4 times.
4 times.
Yeah.
Has anybody else done the Triple Crown 4 times?
Not to my knowledge, and I've asked everybody that would know. I've asked Candace, I've asked Goldberg, I've asked Vaughn, I've asked Wes Plate. These are all the people who do the Triple Crown regularly. I know that Wes Rittner, who's just down the road.
Yes.
I know he's tried, and I haven't. I think he's trying to do it again this year, but Helge Olofsson matched my triple. And then I think we might have one other person that matched my triple, but no one's done it 4.
4 times. Remarkable. So, and those races are some of the most impressive and exciting and challenging in the world.
Well,
you can certainly say that, right?
I think that would be fair. And the triple's evolved. The triple, I hate to say this because I sound like, I have to go to school or go uphill both ways in 3 feet of snow. You kids have it easy. But the triple used to be just brutal. It used to be Tahoe start with Bigfoot, beginning of August, then Tahoe, beginning of September, and then Moab, beginning of October. So you had 9 weeks to do the 3 races.
Unbelievable. And Bigfoot's in Washington State, right?
Yeah.
Around out right near
Gifford Pinchot National Forest. Yep. Back up beyond the Dark Divide and St. Helens Blast Zone.
And Tahoe goes around Lake Tahoe, right? The mountains around Lake Tahoe.
It used to, it's gone back to that now. So now that there's been fire recovery, but those are and then Moab, of course, goes from the La Salle Mountains and the Abajo Mountains, and then all points in between, including Lockhart Basin and some really interesting, pretty red rock country. And so 2 of my triples were the original iteration, and then 2 of them were where it's more spread out. And the reason they're more spread out is that Tahoe kept getting fired out or smoked out. Yeah. And so Candace moved it from September to June, which now it butts up against snow season. But, you have to pick fire or ice, and so you can find the sweet spot in between.
So shout out to Candace Burt.
Yes, Candace Burt. She's the director she's the owner of Destination Trail. And then the director is actually Garrett Froelich, who directs the 4 races of the 200-plus Grand Slam, which is a new edition because of the Arizona Monster, which I have not done yet, which I'm looking to do next year potentially.
And the Monster's a 300-mile race.
That's a 300-mile race. Yep.
So we go into a lot of directions here, and I know we will. But just to lead up and frame this, for those of you out there, the few who've not met Phil on the trail, and I'm meeting Phil for the first time, so I'm one of the few who's not met him, because he's met everyone. And when you go out there and you search him, you realize, how many times have you done some of these races? How many times have you done the Bear?
15.
How many times have you raced a 100-mile race? How many times?
So Crockett and I have a gentleman's disagreement about what counts as a 100-miler.
This is Davey Crockett.
Yeah, I got Crockett started in ultra running. I gave him his first buckle when he finished the Bear 100 after he'd taken out his oil pan his crew took out his oil pan while they were crewing him up in the old barrack horse up in Cub River. But Crockett and I go way back, and I still work with him. He and I co-wrote an article on the original 7 soldiers who ran the Western States course back in the early 70s, which caused some kerfuffle. More on that later if you're so inclined. But Crockett and I are good friends, and I have a lot of respect for him. But he and I disagree about what counts as 100 in the age of easy GPS verification and instantaneous FaceTime or being able to post, hey, I'm at this point doing this. So the indicia of reliability are different now because you don't necessarily need a race structure to show I ran 100 miles. So if you say, how many races have I done? I think I'm at like 73 or 74 100 milers.
Okay.
Total, I've done 87 because I've done a lot of pickup runs. And I used to do them when I lived in Issaquah, Washington. I'd run around on Squawk Mountain and do 100 milers with 18,000 feet of climb. I've done the Wonderland course twice, both times with my wife. And under the allotted time of Davy's got it kind of unofficial. You got to do it under 48 hours. Well, the Wonderland's a beast. And it's not quite 100 miles. So when I got to the end, I actually ran down the highway 3.5 miles and ate thimbleberries along the edge of the highway and then came back, which was delightful. So, there's been some really interesting runs that I've done. I've done 200 milers around in and around the Grand Canyon on the West Rim. Davy's done that too. I give him a lot of credit for being one of the original pioneers of, pickup fat asses, as it were. Excuse the term, but that's what they're called.
Yes.
Davey probably knows the Grand Canyon better than about anybody. And once again, I told him all about it, and he went down and then he reinvented it. He's quite an extraordinary man, actually. And he's done a lot.
We're talking about Davy Crockett.
Yeah, Davy Crockett.
So for those who don't know who Davy is, he's the historian of our sports.
That's correct.
Maybe that's how most people know him, but you know him also as someone you mentored or helped to bring up. I don't know what
it goes both ways. We've mentored each other. In that respect, we've been great colleagues. So, I see someone who's come up in the way and he had a knee replacement. Thought was maybe his career's done, but now I think he's toying with doing something again. I told him he should try 200s because 200s are a lot less torrid. They're a lot slower. And they're actually, they're not easier on the body, but the recovery's longer. But in the moment, I think that they're not quite as brutal as a well-fought 100. And I've also said, by the way, since, we're talking about running generally,
yes,
a well-fought marathon will tear you up more than an easy-going 100.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's interesting. You're one of the few people I've met who thinks that. But I did the Badwater Salton Sea race in April, 81-mile race. So you've got a road segment. You're out in the desert, out at the Salton Sea, the post-apocalyptic landscape. It was 100 degrees out there. And then there's a trail segment, about a 4,000-foot climb. And it's a brutal trail section because it's so hot. But by the time I got to Palomar Peak, it was 38 degrees. And it was probably 100% humidity. And that race, it was a great race for me because I was trying to get under 24 hours and I did. But I had a really good last 30 miles on the road especially. But, that race chewed me up. It really chewed me up. And I thought, I'd already agreed to pace Paul James Johnson at Cocodona. And so I went out to do the pacing. And I'm still tired from the pacing. I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
You were at Cocodona, and you've done Cocodona. How many times have you done Cocodona?
I've DNF'd once and finished once.
And you did this last time?
I finished this last time. I had a condition that a lot of us suffer from once we get over 50, which is called the runner's lean.
Yes, we can talk, and I hope we will.
Yeah.
I've disagreed. Paul and I had a whole colloquy about. He thinks it's caused by one thing. I think you can treat it differently than he does. And I'm really anxious to hear what you have to say.
Oh, I have a lot to say, and I'll keep it short. But I have 2 physical therapists that have weighed in on it, and I did what they told me, and I beat that sucker up. My physical therapist actually texted me during the race. I texted her saying, I'm about to finish. And she goes, how's it holding up? And I said, both of my QLs are supple.
Yeah,
she's like, that's great. That's great.
We will have to get into runner's lean because it actually it's a very intense debate. So yeah. I'm convinced you can beat it. As with my weight coach, I beat it by dragging around a 300-pound sled around my waist for the last 2 years. Now I don't get it at all. I used to get it a lot. I don't get it anymore.
I don't do that, but I do something kind of almost as bad.
dragging around, trying to get that core and your lower, your very lower back and your psoas and everything as strong as you can possibly make it. I didn't think that was possible. I spend so much time in the weight room doing that stuff now. I didn't even know it existed before.
Oh yeah, it was a winter of weights, and psoas is the Army got my psoas in shape when I joined the Army. That doing sit-ups, that's mostly a psoas exercise. So I can lie down anytime you want, and just bang out 50 sit-ups.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
Nobody holding my feet. It's like, okay, here we go. I couldn't do that before I joined the Army. So psoas was not I don't think that was my big problem, but I had some other issues going on there, and that I found that what I came up with was a good solution.
So, and what was that? Since we're at it,
we're here.
Yes, we're here.
So my physical therapist had the theory that it was all about a hip hinge, the hinge between the hips and the back. And the back itself, that's your core, your obliques, your abs. They can be strong as iron, but if you don't have that link strong, then it's going to fail at that point. It's always going to fail at your weakest point. So her theory was it's all glute medians and glute mins. So a whole bunch of abduction exercises, a whole bunch of side planks with scissor kicks, a whole bunch of all that stuff, 6 different hip exercises, glute kickbacks, getting on that glute machine that has the rotating, the hip rotator where you can do abductor, adductor, psoas, and glute. Just a lot of glute work that I hadn't really ever done before. And part of the problem was I had a really bad parachute accident in the Army back in 2010 that I never really got treated. And finally my L5S1 gave up and I had to have surgery, microdiscectomy up in Seattle. So the recovery from that is, the surgery itself is, 41 minutes and a wake up. Okay. It's like literally, okay, we're done and the pain's gone. Awesome. But then you're restricted to a milk jug for 2 months and you can't lift anything. So you waste. And it took me a while, and the lean I had it once at Bigfoot, but that's when I banged out a 71. So I was really pushing. Yeah, wow. And that was impressive. That was back in 2018.
It's really
impressive. I was 52 and banged out a 71. Actually, it was a little bit under 70.
Good for you. Good for you.
And so I got the lean then, but just powered through. And it was actually the other side. So who knows what caused it. But that's what I had to recover from that disc surgery. And I think the glute medians and mins wasted a little bit. Plus I still have S1 nerve deficiency. So I have to compensate for that in my runs to this day.
And where's the S1?
The S1 is the nerve that innervates the outside dorsum of your foot and the inner side of your calf. So my right calf on the inside, I have basically 1.5 heads of my gastroc.
Yeah.
The other side is wasted, and I don't have very strong eversion, which is the ability to push out. So I have a tendency to roll that right foot, and I also blistering pattern has changed. So I have a podiatrist from Brisbane, Australia, who's taught me how to avoid blisters. I mean, what you do is have a regime here, and I'm a security guy, so I speak in terms of controls, technical, administrative, physical, and you have compensating controls for the things you can't control.
Right.
So all those compensating controls now are what I use to try to still get me through these races at the ripe old age of 59.
Well, we have, in a way, something in common with that too. I lost my right Achilles in an accident in 2017 and had it rebuilt on an experimental basis with my stem cells and a fake Achilles, not a cadaver, but a fake one that actually eventually became stronger than the one on my left side, my natural one. But it also, the unevenness, I lost a chunk of my calf in the accident, and the unevenness has caused, I have less than 10% cartilage in my right knee. So I've got a fine left knee and a really not a good right knee at all. So much so that I'm on my 3rd knee doctor now. The other 2 have quit on me, telling me to not run anymore. But as a result of the uneven gait that I have, I'm constantly getting, for example, I'm working on blisters on my left heel because I'm always overcompensating on my left side. And, when I get tired, my gait gets off and so I appreciate what you have to go through. I mean, people ask me sometimes, well, is there some moment when it doesn't hurt in some way? It's like, yeah, if I'm running, it hurts. I mean, there's no time that I don't have a little bit of pain at least.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. And so I appreciate the fact that you're able to do all these things that you do. And in terms of 200-mile races, how many have you done? You're up around 20, right?
I hit 20 at Coco.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Let me shake your hand.
Yeah, thank you.
So that is absolutely extraordinary. And you got to have maybe the most or about the most 20-mile official 20-mile races. I understand Davy Crockett and
no, they're all official. I'll quote the Rocket, Errol Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Errol always struggled to finish the bear. He loved the bear.
Yeah.
But he always struggled. In fact, he and I ran it together, and he had to DNF a couple of years ago. But he always had trouble staying awake. But the one year I remember he crossed in like 35:55, crossed the finish line, and here's the Rocket. And he says, I'll tell you something, Leland. You can fake a marathon and you can fake a 50, but you can't fake 100.
No, you sure can't. That's perfect.
Those that know the Rocket can hear and see him and see his
can't
face when
fake
he
a
says
200
that.
either. That's for sure.
No, and that's the other thing is, so I'm not saying you can fake 100. I totally believe in Errol's words, but can you get up and walk out of your house and I had the blessing of living next to a state park. Okay. So, and I had a route planned out. So I would go out and do these hundreds because I really wanted to get 100 hundreds, even if they weren't official.
Of course.
And just to say that I'd done it. And so I would do those, and they hurt and they sucked, but they were something that you could do. A 200, that's without the benefit of being part of the group dynamic, even if it's, the couple of virtual ones that Candace did back in the day because of COVID or because of the fires or because of rescheduling. Even those, one of those I did with my wife where we stayed at Monica's Brighton Lodge there, the cinder block place right next to where the Brighton Aid station is at Wasatch. And we did all these loops. We went down into Mill D and we did the old Wasatch course and we ran over Catherine's Pass. And it was a very, very tough course that we did, but it was the virtual Tahoe that she set up for the people going for the triple who got smoked out of Tahoe because Tahoe essentially got canceled. And she goes, well, I don't want to cancel the triple. So Candace made that available. And so that was officially sanctioned and it was verified and everything. But even then I did it with my wife and it was brutal, but I had someone to be with. I just can't imagine going out and saying, I think I'm going to take the next 4 days off and go do a 200 just because I want to do giggles and grins. And I'm going to stay at a hotel in Frisco and I'm going to go up all these mountains. I can't imagine that. And when Crockett used to do those pickup 100s that he used to do, that blew my mind until I did it and I realized it's doable. Now, maybe I would change my mind, but every time I do a 200, there comes that point about mile 80 where I'm like, this is insane.
So 2200s. So I'm thinking of people I know and people have been on the show. Paul James Johnson, he just finished his 5th Cocodona and 5 years in a row. And, oldest ever, age 69. And shout out to Mark Vega and CJ Johnson and Jill Palezzi. The three of us, or the four of us paced Paul. But, he had a pacer every place he was allowed to have a pacer. And he had his son, CJ, was the crew chief, which was amazing. He's got Cocodona down. And I think he's on 18. He's done 18 official 100-mile races.
I don't know the official number.
I think 20 is the most of anyone I've heard of.
That already may be gone because of Walter, the underwear man, hand loser. And I call him that with all affection because one year he finished Moab past Jill and I because all he had on was underwear. That was the really cold year where there was snow on the LaSalle's and his shorts ripped open, so he had to finish in his undies.
I've heard that story.
Yeah, it's actually classic. I love Walter to death. And Walter has to thank me for tuning him into red vines at Cocodona this year. He was ogling my red vines I had in my drop bag. And he's like, where'd you get those? I was in my drop bag. And the next thing I know, I think his crew what I got is some red vines because he's munching on red vines later on. But Walter's trying to do the 25 200s this year, and I think he's well on his way.
Wow. Well, good for Walter.
The next time I think I see him is at Summit, which I'm planning on doing.
Oh, you're going to do the Summit.
Yeah, I'm doing Summit.
Paul's doing Summit too. So, So I'm doing Switzerland. I'm doing the Crossing Switzerland 400K in July.
Okay, that's awesome.
I did the race across Scotland last August to 215. It was actually 225. And then I had the ITRA 6 points and so on. So I was able to get into the Switzerland race. So
that's awesome.
So I'm excited about that. So I'm Then I'm doing Moab in the fall. I've never done Moab, and I've never done a destination trails race, so I'm very excited about that. So,
Yeah,
and you've done how many destination trails races have you done? Do you know?
All 19
total cumulative.
19.
19.
The Coco was my first one that was not a DT. I've done 7. I want to say I've done 7 Bigfoots. I don't know if anybody's done 7 Bigfoots. And I'm kind of sad I won't be there this year, but it just didn't work out for me by schedule. But 7 Bigfoots, but I'm going to be doing the triple next year, so I'll be back. But 7 Bigfoots, I want to say, I think of those, it was 7 Bigfoots, 6 Moabs, and 6 Tahoes.
Amazing. And so you've signed up for the Triple Crown for next year already.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to do the Crossing Norway, which is a 500K.
Oh, I've heard about that one.
It's,
Ben Light, I think,
Oslo
tried
to
that.
Bergen Trail is what it's called. Oslo to Bergen Trail. So yeah, I got into that one, and I'm thinking about, well, the Cocodona lotteries today, and I don't have any points. So I told Paul James Johnson that if he doesn't get in, I think he'll get in, right? He's done it 5 times in a row.
His odds are incredible.
His odds looked really good from what I saw. My odds looked infinitesimally small. Said if we both don't get into Cocodona, we'll do Costa Rica 200 together.
Oh, there you go.
But if you don't do it, then and you could do Cocodona instead. I guess I'll do Costa Rica, and then I'll pace you at Cocodona.
Well, and there's a new one down in San Luis.
Well, I heard about that. Tell us about that, because I
don't know much about it, except it's the same guys that put on Mesa's Hideout.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, and if you've ever been to San Luis,
I have not. I've just heard about it. So.
Yeah, well, I live in Albuquerque and I work hybrid in Denver, so I've actually done the drive, and it's really quite spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very keen on knowing more about that race, and the problem, of course, is that I've wanted to do the Summit 200 for quite some time, ever since Jason Brock, who's my friend from Utah, who's done a lot of these. He's one of those people that's right out there too. He's probably in the teens.
Yeah.
But I'll talk about that demographic here in a second. But he turned me on to Summit, and so I really want to do Summit. Plus, it works really well for my schedule with being in a new job and not having much leave accrued. Plus the fact that I'm really passionate about what I do professionally.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in a second. I'm excited to get to that.
I just didn't have. I couldn't see taking the time to go out to Washington. It used to be that Bigfoot was literally 89 or 97 minutes drive down to the start.
Yeah,
and that was from Issaquah. So, and get to drive through Rainier National Park on the way. So it's that's a natural race for me. Now you don't appreciate the full Bigfoot until you have to actually travel to get there.
Yeah.
And then your crew gets a little teeny pre-taste of what it's going to be like to crew the thing. Because if you crew it full passion, it's 600 miles and it's harder to crew than to race. And I say that quoting my wife, who has done both. And she said, I'll never crew this again. I'll race it before I crew it.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've never done Bigfoot, but I know Killian Korth just a little bit now. And I was intrigued on one of the podcasts, it might have been Distance to Empty, where he was saying that he was racing his mother, was his crew chief one time. It might have been this last year, right? And he was beating her.
He was beating her. And
he was beating her.
Yeah.
She was trying to get to the aid stations. That it took him less time to run it than it did for her to drive it because it's so remote. So.
Yeah. And my wife knows that area pretty well. She knows how crazy it is. And even then, once she was crewing me and she got on some logging road and had to back our Subaru Outback out half a mile on a horrible 1-lane road, getting scratched the whole time. Yeah. I'm like, my car.
So I have to ask you, because I want to get back to Cocodona. Because I'm going to eventually get you to talk about where the sport is going and where it's been and so on. And all roads seem to be leading to Cocodona, and whether that's good or bad in some respects. But
it's weird, but we'll talk about it.
It is weird. But I want to talk about your career, because I think it's an extraordinary career. And I want to make sure that I kind of understand the basics of it. Mm-hmm. So you joined the Army, but was it not until 2007?
So this is an interesting story.
Yes.
I started practicing law, started out,
and you went to UCLA, right?
Correct. I went to UCLA Law School. I was a classmate of Eugene Volokh, who, is
I know very well.
Yeah.
Good friend of my wife's.
Yeah. Oh, good for you.
Shout out to Eugene Volokh. So
okay. Yes. Well, hey, Eugene, if you listen to Ultra Running Podcasts,
yes.
Kakdila, Moj Tavarish.
Molodets.
It drives him crazy when I try to speak Russian, but I actually have learned quite a bit more since I was in law school, Eugene. So we'll go from there.
Little known fact, I was a Russian language and literature major at Stanford, and I was Condi Rice's research assistant for 2 years.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Я очень плохо русский язык, so.
Понятно. So anyway, yeah, I got a son who's a submariner, and he minored in Russian at the Naval Academy. So he's always the designated linguist. He's the weapons officer too, which I find hilarious for its irony. But that's our Thanksgiving code.
Maybe
language.
A necessary skill. Who knows?
Yeah,
at this point, so.
Yeah. We that's how we speak in code. And he and I are pretty tight. And he's also an ultramarathoner. He's never done 100, but he's done a couple of 50Ks. And it gets infectious. I have one son who's done a 100-miler. But yeah.
How many? And you have 9 kids? Did I hear
8.
8. Sorry. I didn't mean to add a whole other child.
Fine.
So
that's one more.
So that's 6 more than Alice and I have. So
well,
fantastic.
Yeah. Congratulations to you too.
And your wife's a surgeon, right?
Yeah. Now she's the stepmom. Mm-hmm. So mom is now living in Utah, and stepmom is my wife in Albuquerque.
Okay.
But I started out practicing law in Utah, mostly as a litigator. I did appellate and civil litigation. And you clerked. And I clerked. I clerked on the 10th Circuit for a year, and then went into private practice. And then I decided I wanted to move out of private practice and I went first into government work. Started work for the Department of the Air Force, ended up going in-house, and now I'm at Western Union after going through a couple of other financial tech firms. Let's spell it out for folks.
So what did you major in?
Philosophy and music.
Okay. All right.
Right. I was a performance and orchestral performance and philosophy major.
What was your instrument?
String bass.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
French horn for me.
So. Oh, there you go.
Yes. So.
Yeah. We'll can do some Mozart later.
I'm still so excited. Just as an aside, Colorado Symphony had the guts to perform Mahler's Second Symphony yesterday. Oh. And we went downtown. We live in the mountains, so we went downtown for that. It was the most amazing thing they've ever done, and it was sold out.
Yeah.
All these people cheering for Mahler for 20 minutes in Denver.
Yeah.
It was great.
Mahler 2 is I've seen Mahler 9 in concert. I've never seen I haven't performed Mahler 2. But I know it very, very well. So anyway.
Wow. Okay. So do you still perform or still play?
Not really. I sold my bass a few years ago, and I play the cello also.
Fantastic.
So I'm my boss she's in Dublin. She's the vice president for a lot of the legal ops at Western Union, but I'm primarily North American privacy, and I'm also cybersecurity and working more and more with AI. She's a fiddler. Okay. She's Irish. She lives in Dublin, and she's a fiddler. And I told her, hey, I play cello, and that might actually inspire me to go down to Robinson's Violin Shop in Albuquerque, which is one of the best string shops in the Western United States.
I've actually
and they have a room full of cellos that are $5,000 Chinese cellos, and I've gone in there and played a couple times. And every time I think one of the Robinson sons, the sons of the founder that run this shop, says, "Are you going to buy one this time?" I'm like, I haven't got around to it, but I'm going to think about it. Maybe that's going to inspire me this weekend. But so here's the deal: I'd always wanted to be in the Army. My dad was career. He's buried at Arlington. My mom's buried next to him. They have two flip sides of the gravestone. They're in Section 65 near the Columbarium. Those who ever go to Arlington want to look him up. He's right there, same name as me, and I would appreciate it. But the interesting thing is that I never really got around. Even after 9/11, I went whole hog and decided to do it, put my papers in, and then I pulled out at the last minute because I was, it's a big change to go into the reserves. And so in 2006, my dad died. That was in October of 2006.
My dad died in 2006 too. So.
Yeah. So I'm sorry
you lost him. It's always hard.
Yeah. Well, especially now, after all the things I've seen, and after rising to the same rank as him as a colonel, and see both the good and the bad side, because when you get to this level in the Army, it's like whether you're a command sergeant major or you're a colonel, you've seen everything kind of. Even within the JAG Corps, which I haven't seen everything from the infantry or the combat arms, but certainly within the JAG Corps, right now I grumble about, well, we're behind in AI. We need to develop a curriculum. And I'm working with another colonel out of the Texas Guard. He's now in the reserves, trying to develop AI curriculum so we can get our JAGs smarter in AI. Because I already did that thing for cyber. I started that course in 2015. I worked with some great colleagues who got it accredited. Hats off to Dimple Chetta and Alan Dunbar and Jeff Chang. who are now senior ranking JAGs all over the services, Army and Air Force. We stood that course up, and we got a cyber law course for the National Guard to understand defense of critical infrastructure. So that was one of the big things I did in the Guard.
Wow.
And now I'm pivoting with that institutional knowledge, saying we need to get our lawyers spun up in AI, because the questions I'm getting are not even juvenile, they're amateurish. And it's not their fault. No. It's my fault, because I'm the subject matter expert and I should be purveying that information. So going back, the Army, I decided when my dad died, I was going to do this because I was turning 40 and it was time. It was either now or never. So I was like the oldest guy in my basic course. Well, not the very oldest. There were some folks who were branch transferring, coming over from being helicopter pilots. They were tired of being shot at or whatever.
Yeah.
But one of my good friends just released a book, Mike Leibowitz, talking about, what Al-Qaeda's plans were after 9/11. Mike's brilliant. I think Mike's my age, but he had come over from being a cavalry scout. I think, Mike, if I got it wrong, forgive me. Anyway, amazing people to be with and to break bread with and to professionally grow with. And so the Army was the one that really facilitated my growth in cyber, because they paid for my original Security Plus certification. And they said, we're going to put you in charge of this exercise. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. They said, nobody does. Just go do it. Figure it out. Welcome to the Army, right? And so that was in parallel with my career as being in-house. And so I was able to grow into the role of being first a cybersecurity attorney, then a privacy attorney, and then ended up picking up certs along the way, Apex certifications like CISB and Fellow of Information Privacy. And now I have the AI cert. And you want to know how I learned most of the material for those certs? Was listening to lectures while I was running. And I'm not kidding.
I believe that.
I am not kidding.
Especially, that gets to a larger issue, which is that. So when I look at your resume, you're a colonel in the Army, and you joined the Army at age 40. Mm-hmm. You've already had a career before that, and you're already a serious ultra runner before that, right?
Yeah.
How old were you when you did your first ultra?
Let's see. I was 28.
28.
I did my first ultra was the Wasatch 100.
And so you have been a serious ultra runner, and you've had a brilliant career, and then you're joining the Army on top of everything and having a great career within the Army. How have you been able to do all these things? And you have 6 children. It's not like you decided to stay single or something, right?
No.
Have you had a pet? Maybe you decided no pets.
There weren't very many pets. I'll tell you that. There was a cat we took in later on that's still around that Jill and I now have at home. He's the old gangster, but he was very good to the kids, and they're very grateful that I'm taking care of him. But his name's he was Heather until we took him to the vet and figured out he was Heathcliff. He was a stray. He was definitely a rescue.
Oops.
Amazing Russian blue. But a lot of very early mornings. Mm-hmm. When you're younger, you can get away with less sleep. Mm-hmm. And so on training days, I would get up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would get my runs in before work. Mm-hmm. And I could function that way. I don't think I could do that now. But I don't train quite as much now because you have that fitness base. And I spend more time in the gym. And Carl Meltzer and I were reflecting on this a couple of years ago. Carl's a very dear friend of the family.
The speed goat.
Yeah, the speed goat. Carl's the winningest 100-miler, and I keep teasing him, you got to do a 200, Carl. But
has he never done one?
No, he hasn't.
Does he want to?
I don't think he does, but I wonder if he's going to be like Browning and go try one out. And it's like, oh, this sucks. Because I talked to Browning after Moab 240. He's like, I don't know if I want to do this again.
Well, if he listens to this, maybe he will, because
Browning's not. He did Coco. So
you made the statement, and I happen to agree with it. I've only done 3 200-mile races, only 3. But I think that I prefer them to 100-mile races. They don't chew you up quite as much.
They don't.
And I turned to it. My path has been so different. I was a road marathoner and a road racer. And even though I grew up in Colorado, I didn't run a trail race until the first one was 2013. Mm-hmm. And I didn't run my first ultra until 2015. And there's this whole world that was opened up to me. Yeah. I've been running since 78 continuously.
Yeah. So you came from that road running world, and I never really resonated there. I started to get into running, and I didn't like running on the road, but I loved running on the trail. And so a couple things. So first of all, I always like to characterize people who end up doing ultras as coming from 2 different groups. It's either road runners who decide they want to run on the dirt and they like the scenery.
That was me, and are slowing down.
And they're slowing down.
Frustrated that you're not able to do the metronome and hit the pace exactly
right.
The way you
want. Instead of the wall falling in on you at 23, it falls in on you at 17.
That's exactly right.
This sucks.
Exactly right.
And then there's the hikers who get faster. I was a hiker who got faster. I was actually a mountain biker. I was one of the very first people who ever mountain biked in the trails above Provo. I had an old rock hopper, no shock. And I would go everywhere. I'd go on these crazy trails, and people say, "You rode down the Snake Canyon, you rode on Slide Canyon. Wow, that's crazy." So, but yeah, I teased Carl about it. Carl and Cheryl have been real good to Jill and me, and great people. And one of the things that Carl talks about in terms of base fitness is, I never do training runs over 20 miles. And I bumped into him at Porter Fork in the Cottonwoods or in Mill Creek a few years ago. He was up on a run. We hardly ever saw each other, but we bumped into. It was during COVID, and I said, "What are you up to now?" He says, "I used to do training runs of 30 miles, 35 miles, 40 miles all the time, and I just don't do that anymore." Mm-hmm. So now it's more like, okay, let's do 8 or 10 quality miles, but I can do that, and then still get away with being able to finish the races. Now, maybe I could do them faster, but I'm also fighting the injury demon like everybody else my age. Right. So it's like, I don't know if it's worth it to me.
And you have to be in the gym more often.
Yeah. And the other thing is most 200s I walk. Mm-hmm. And people have asked me, well, what do you lose by walking? I said 10%.
So when you say most 200s you walk, what do you mean by that?
Well, number one, in all fairness, people tell me this, I walk very fast.
Okay.
But I've been able to finish Bigfoot in the 80s walking. I've been able to finish Moab in the 80s by walking, like mid 80s. I finished Bigfoot last year in 88 walking.
Do you walk the whole time?
Yeah, you walk the whole time.
Well, see, that makes a lot of sense. If you can keep up most people don't have the mental fortitude to keep walking fast, in my opinion.
It's really hard.
It really is.
You want to break into running because you just want to I want to be done, but you can't. Yeah. You have to be tactically patient.
Yeah.
You have to sit. You have to be like special forces. Like I used to represent the special forces when I was in Afghanistan. You have to sit in your hidey hole and you have to poop in your MRE packages. So everything you pack out, no one ever knows you're there. Yeah. You have to be tactically patient and wait for the opportunity to call in an observation or to attack or whatever the case may be. You just have to be very, very disciplined to walk the entire distance.
Did you walk in Afghanistan at all? And the reason I ask is that Corey Robluski was one of the guests on this podcast, and he was a combat helicopter over there, went to West Point, helicopter pilot. Mm-hmm. And he talked about the fact that they weren't allowed to really run, but he did run anyway. They'd run inside Bagram. They would run around.
You can run on Disney Road.
They're supposed to run with their firearm.
Yeah. So. Oh, no. I didn't have to run with my M4, but I always had my 9. And there was a pack that was made by Ultraspire that actually you had 2 water bottle things. And it had a pouch in between them.
Yeah, I have one of those.
That holds an M9 perfectly. A Beretta fits in there perfectly, and you can quick draw it. I tested it.
That's good to know.
So. Yeah, I went to the range with it just to make sure that I could. I wore my pack, and they're like, "Sir, what are you doing?" It's like,
the bottle's the one with the magnets?
Yeah.
I have one of those.
You put a Beretta between those 2, and then you bang. I didn't ever fire it because I went to the range and said, I'm just going to be drawing my weapon and I want to draw it in a safe way. Yeah. Because we had specialists that were in the freaking gym that would pretend that they were Cool Hand Luke, and we had one put around through the mirror. So you got to be careful about how you handle your weapon down range. That's exciting. But what's interesting, when you say walk, I was at Camp Marmol in Mazar-e Sharif, and they were actually doing, this is an interesting story. They were doing construction. Mm-hmm. And I would go in the construction zone because I was so tired of the treadmill. And about once a week, I would say, out, just hang it all. Yeah. I'm going to run around the perimeter of Marmol. But then you had the sewage pits, and you had the diesel, and you had all these stinks. And then you had the German man who comes by in his cross-country skis on rollers. And we're like, okay, here comes the German army. They're everywhere. And so it was a German post. I got to know some Germans very well there. Ended up singing the German national anthem at a redeployment ceremony, actually. That's a whole nother story. But I went out in the construction zone, and the signs weren't very clear. And I came up to this gate, and I thought there were a lot of interior gates. And I came to this gate that had 2 Afghans guarding it. And they kind of looked at me weird. And I had my ID and I had my pistol. And I said, Bisyor Hub. And they said, okay, fine. I said, very good, very good. I said, Sob B'chair, good morning. And they're like, okay, see ya. And I ran out 50 yards, and all of a sudden, here comes this bus completely overloaded with Afghan workers coming onto the post to work. And they're coming towards me. And I'm like, I'm in Indian country. I am outside the wire right now. Okay. And I was more afraid. I was not afraid of being kidnapped or shot at all. I was more afraid of the letter of reprimand I was going to get from my commander if I was caught out here. So I turned right around, and the two Afghan guys are looking at me with a little grin on their face, like, you figured it out. And I ran back. It's like, oh, but
they weren't going to tell you, were they?
So they were
going to let you be on your own.
They were just going to like, okay, well, the crazy green girl's going somewhere. We don't know. So anyway, I got back on post. But that was what you'll do in search of dirt. You know what I'm saying? I totally get it.
I had this happen in Bethel, Alaska, where I decided in a stroke of sheer genius, I was going to run on the ice road.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was really great because I got in the ice road and I was in the center of the river, and a semi came at like 65 miles an hour. But the ice on both sides of me was like 5 or 6 feet tall.
Okay, yeah.
And I couldn't grab onto it. I was trying to get off the
what are you
ice
supposed
road.
to do?
And he wasn't going to see me, and he wasn't going to stop. So, I mean, I was practically screaming, trying to get on, eventually was able to get myself up and over.
Yeah.
And then I slid down the backside, and it was, 4 feet up, trying to get back up to get back to the road. So craziness. You'll do anything for dirt, right?
Yeah,
anything
exactly.
for dirt. In this case, the dirt was ice, but.
Well, I'll share with you this one aspect of the demographic. One of the things I'd be curious about your thoughts on this. I find that there are not a lot of repeat customers for 200s. Well, hundreds, people get the bug and they're back and back and back and back.
Well, let me, before we get to that, because I want to segue, because that's a really great point. I think that's true, number one. And number two, you're unusual, I think, in that you do so many, I mean, granted, they're great races, but you do so many races more than one time, I mean, multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
What is that about?
Well, it's the
for
opposite.
those of us who are usually one and done. Some of us are mostly one and done.
It's curious. I've never looked at, okay, so we got somebody who's a one-off at Bigfoot and they never come back and they ran it 5 years ago, but I haven't taken a look to see whether they've done a bunch of others.
Yeah.
Now, up until recently, there weren't a bunch of others. So there you go.
But why, for example, why have you done Bigfoot? How many times have you done
7 times.
Why have you done Bigfoot?
I love that country.
Okay.
I love that country.
You just love the course.
I love the course, and all of Destination Trails courses I've really loved. I've also loved coming back and seeing the same people and being able to see Candace and Brian Wilford, who's the medical director, and Garrett, who's the race director. These are people that I've really gotten to know well. And so I like being around them. Now, at the same time, there's the mentality of like a Gabe Peterson, who's I know pretty well. I met him at Moab. And he shared with me that he doesn't like to do any race more than once.
Yeah.
He's always trying to diversify. And so I've kind of put, apart from the fact that I've had some constraints, but the fact that I'm kind of beaten up from Coco and also I have my new job, I've decided this year that I need to do something different.
Yeah.
But next year I'm going to go back to DT because that's kind of where, that's the shining beacon for me in terms of I like the vibe there. It doesn't mean I don't like the vibe elsewhere. I need to try to do that. But, I'm a guy who did Wasatch 21 times and the Bear 15 times. And then all the others are kind of like, me, I've done Zion 6 or 7 times. And then there's everybody else is kind of like Morse code all over the country. I just keep going back to the same thing. And I guess it's just kind of how I'm wired. Once I get to know something, it's a safe bet and I'll just keep doing it. And that's a part of human psychology. There's people who, they go to Subway and they get the same thing every time.
I'm wondering if I could
people who get something different every time.
If I could ever get you to run one of our Navajo Park Series races. I've been on the board of that for 14 years.
Yeah, I actually was.
They're probably not long enough for you. So our longest races are only 50 miles long. So
but I had this conversation with my wife the other day where I was like, I wonder if I should find out just for training runs, go out and do some of these races because then
you should.
You got
love to have you
and everything.
So. Yeah, we'd love to have you. So we have in the Park Series we have 8 races a year. I've done more than 50 races at Navajo, most of them 50Ks. And the good news is that if you're not Navajo, you can get access to areas that are close to you.
Yes.
And some of them are the most spectacular. Navajo Mountain, when you're up on Natsasan, you get up there and you're looking across, you can see Lake Powell down below. In fact, one year we had a race down to Rainbow Bridge from Navajo Mountain and then back. It was a relay race, so we ferried everybody in with powerboats. It was awesome. So you'd run a marathon down, and then the next runner would go by boat, and meet you, hand off, and then come back up to where you started. You know?
Navajo
amazing.
Mountain, it has huge folklore in my family.
Yeah,
I'm always
it's a fantastic place.
I've taken the kids all over the Grand Staircase, and all of the kids have gone to the river and back in the Grand Canyon, all 8 of them.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I found a picture this morning of my 2 oldest, Maria and Ian, when they were 10 and 8. And I had taken them down to the river and back up. That's basically when we stopped.
I have more than 200 days backpacking in the Grand Canyon.
Oh, that's amazing.
Total. Going back to 1977, and then the late Harvey Butchart, I hiked with him. So
oh yeah,
we went Grand Canyon treks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm the last person he hiked with before he passed. Several times I got to hike with him.
Wow. Okay.
Only because I wrote him letters until he couldn't not invite me anymore.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. Well, it's interesting. I don't know the answer offhand. I don't know whether there's just not as many people who are repeat customers of the 200s or whether they're diversifying or they're like, you know what? My wife makes the point, she's a professional, she's a surgeon. And so she's like, these things, it's basically, you have to take 2 weeks off.
You do.
You're spending several days on the prep and the logistics, and then you're traveling to it, and then you're doing the thing, and then you're destroyed afterward. Then for a surgeon,
you have to clean up. Then you have to put all the gear away.
Yes. And well, normally, oftentimes I would help her with that. I'd help her with the pre and the post, otherwise I knew that she probably wouldn't be able to do it at all. And I was always very invested in her success. In fact, there were a couple times at Bigfoot where I would finish the race about a day before her. I would sleep for 3 or 4 hours, and then I would crew her the last 2 aid stations.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great experience. And she crewed me at Cocodona. So she was there the whole week.
That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow.
She brought her mountain bike, and she had one of her colleagues and friends come out, and they mountain biked all over the place. And I got to the 1 aid station where she was going to crew me. Pace me. And she goes, I'm not going to pace you. I'm going to go mountain biking. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll just put on my audiobook. I'm good.
So let's now shift to Cocodona, since you segued us to Cocodona. So you have not just seen the sport develop of ultramarathoning. You've actually been one of the integral cast of characters. I mean, you're a name that anyone who's paid attention to ultramarathoning for a long time will have heard your name. They may not have met you. They may be like me. I've not met you before today. I'm honored to meet you, but I've heard about you for years. Different people, different conversations. Might be late at night. You're going on a 100-mile race or something, and somebody mentions Phil Lowry,
the guy who sings.
The guy who sings.
Hans-Dieter Weishar and his wife. I used to sing Schubert Lieder and Beethoven for her Susie, because she always loved it when I would sing to her in German. And he used to have the record for most hundreds in a year.
Amazing. So you have described a very makeshift sort of endeavor. For the most part, a lot of races that were not as, the number of participants was small relative to today.
Yeah.
You've seen the 200-mile race come on the scene, and you've been involved with Candace Bird and a leader in Destination Trails, right? You're a GIS director for them.
For a while, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering, we get to Cocodona, and Cocodona it's a different kind of animal, I would say. The feel of it is different, and I'm not complaining, but it isn't just that it's live streamed. It's that now Satisfy has an aid station, and you're seeing corporate sponsorship, and even the funny stuff like John G doing the Mingus Basketball League on top of Mingus Mountain.
And I took a shot and completely airballed
it. and it's become a sport within a sport. It's an event that actually it is possible that people who know nothing about ultramarathoning have heard of Cocodona now, but they've never heard of anything else.
Right.
They don't know anything about it, at least in terms of the 200-mile race scene. It's kind of in terms of influence on social media and so on. I would say it's probably in a class of its own for 200-mile. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah. So,
and is that good or bad?
Well, I don't want to put a normative cast on it. I don't know if it's good or bad. It is.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
Yeah, I think that's a better question. So I remember when Cocodona was first announced by Jamil, and I knew who Jamil was because he and his brother were involved in doing things with ultras down in Arizona for a while. And then Aravaipa, and I don't know the origin story of Aravaipa intimately. I just know that they had a race down in the Sierra Estrella that was really cool. That was a 100-miler you could do in January, which is totally fits that pattern, right? If people are kind of stir crazy and they want to go on do 100, and so you can go down there and do laps in this park, and it's really nice. And there were other things that were doing that too, like Javelina, and that was started by Jerry Kilgariff. I don't know if she was the one who started, but she certainly was a personality, let's say. Mm-hmm. I'd never gone down and done that. I thought it was a little weird to do 5 laps in the McDowells. That was where I used to be a Boy Scout. I grew up in Mesa. So I was
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
I knew that area really well, and I never thought it would be a place you'd do a race. But I remember a comment made by Irv Nielsen back in the day. Irv's on the Wasatch 100 committee.
Okay.
Where he said, hey, if there's a fire on Wasatch, one of the plans is we can just have everybody go out to the salt flats and do laps. And what do you know?
Yeah, now there is a race.
Now there is a race out there.
Is that the Pony Express?
No, the Pony Express is actually farther south. And I've actually done that 100-miler.
Okay.
That was where I set my PR, like 1954. I did that under 20 hours.
Good for you.
That was a long time ago. But the Salt Flats 100 is a race that's done every May. In fact, I think it just happened like the same weekend as Cocodona.
Is it actually on the Bonneville Salt Flats?
Yeah, wow. It's on the Bonneville Salt Flats, and it goes over a couple of sky islands, those mountain ranges. Mm-hmm. But it's funny. Mm-hmm. And then the backyard ultras, oh my gosh. I mean, we would have made fun of something like that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that's totally crazy. And now all of a sudden it's got this cachet. So
have you done one of those?
No. And I have no desire to do it.
So Barry Sackett was a guest on this podcast, and he's a specialist in, among other things, backyard ultras.
Yeah.
And he has so many good things to say about it. I've never done one. It looks dreadful to me, but that's just me.
Yeah, but the same thing with the across the years. Crockett would go down and do the 48 or the 96 or whatever the heck, and Crockett would win it because Crockett he's the Energizer freaking bunny, and now he points it and goes. And so anyway, I remember when Cocodona was first announced, and it was announced on Ultra Sign Up, pending permit and all this stuff.
I paid my money, by the way. I didn't go because
I registered and then I withdrew.
Well, I withdrew too. I mean, it turned out to be our daughter was graduating from college. And I didn't realize that those were the days.
Well, that's part of the issue.
And Allison said, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, so, and that's one of the things that happens with Coco's trying to find a place to stay because it's always finishes on the same weekend as NAU graduation.
But it never would have occurred to me that then it would become such a big deal that you can't get into it easily.
Well, okay, so here, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
All right.
And what does that mean?
You see this race come up, and the concept is, from my austere, Wasatch 100, Bear 100, Bighorn 100, Bigfoot 200, Moab, you don't go through towns when you run a 100-miler. I mean, Moab starts and finishes in Moab, but it's like you leave civilization and then you are beyond the pale, and literally, that's an old phrase of going beyond the frontier in Ukraine. You're beyond the pale, and then you come back, and it's like you come back as a changed person, right? Now you've got a race that's going through Prescott with and you've got Jerome, some history. You've got Frou-Frou Land in Sedona.
Well, and also, I mean, this was a bit of a shock to me. I'd never lived in Arizona, but I practiced a lot of law there, and I've worked for an Arizona congressman for a couple of years, Jim Colby, the late Jim Colby. So I know the state a bit. I paced Paul James Johnson from Prescott, all the way up across Fain Ranch, so all the way across the Prescott Valley, and then up Mingus Mountain, and then down to Dead Horse. And I mention this because I couldn't believe Fain Ranch. Fain Ranch is now becoming a giant subdivision. So we were like running. You recall this, right? You're going through a subdivision, and miles of tract housing, if you will.
Yeah, you're on a rail trail,
and it's not pleasant.
Yeah, I'm going along the rail trail during the race, and I got houses on both sides of me, and all of a sudden this bicyclist goes by me, and then she stops right in front of me, and she pulls out a camera. She goes, "How are you?" It's my wife. She wasn't crewing me. She wasn't pacing. She was just taking pictures. She'd taken pictures of 20 runners. In fact, I got to get those pictures, and I got to get them posted on the Cocodona 250 page. But it was really trippy, and so whether that concept of being in an urban interface run was going to catch on or not, I didn't know. But until I did the race and kind of caught the vibe of what it was like, I could see that there's some appeal there. But I spent an hour on the phone when I was going over Mount Eldon during the race this year, and I was talking to my son. And my son is an old soul. He's my oldest son. He's a former naval officer, went to the academy. Now he's getting his doctorate in nursing while his wife's on a ship in the Persian Gulf. His wife met at the academy. They're both outstanding folks, but he's got a lot of insight. And I'm like, what is going on with this thing? because he's telling me all about Rachel and all the things she did.
Yeah.
And he's telling this and that. And he says, Dad, it's the live streaming. It's because they have this race on the big screen behind the 4th floor nursing station the whole time. It's like the freaking Tour de France.
Yeah, no, I get it. It is like the Tour de France.
Yeah,
Right
and
now,
people and they don't know anything about cycling, but they just leave it on.
Yeah, that's
because
true. That's true.
This is kind of cool, and it's not offensive, and it's got a good vibe.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like, what's happening during the race?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first year I did it. Now, this year they didn't do it this way. They had live streaming in other places. But I saw Jamil up when you finally get above 4,000 feet in that first climb, and you're looking down to your right, and you can look down on the Black Canyon Freeway.
Yeah.
And you're making your way up towards that second water station. And Jamil's up there with a freaking Starlink and a portable power pack, and he's live streaming everybody from the middle of freaking nowhere.
Yeah.
And I thought, number one, that is not a high barrier to entry as long as you're willing to schlep the gear.
Right.
Number two, it doesn't take a lot of technical knowledge. And number three, it's revolutionary in concept that you could do that. And a lot of people out there don't realize it's not that hard, even without a helicopter, because ultra runners are strong, and Jamil's an ultra runner.
Yeah.
He can find either himself or someone who can go up there with the gear and do it and say, hey, isn't this novel? So that's the theory of life, according to Ian Lowry, my son, that is what has broken it wide open and made the sport accessible in a way it never could be. And we have had this debate at Wasatch where aid station after aid station after aid station has been closed to crew because you got 400 people in the race and there's no room for anybody at Lambs Canyon to park. And you can't drive up Mill Canyon anymore to cheer on your runner. And you can't drive up to Pole Line Pass anymore to cheer your runner. And so it's like, so how do the people participate in the race? Well, you set up a camera with a Starlink. It's like, wow. And to me, I don't know. I've only been a participant. I've never been an observer. And since it's really taken off, right? I mean, I got into Coco just by registering the first year. There was no lottery.
Yeah, well, me too.
And then
I didn't do it.
Then last year after I DNF'd, I decided I would try again. And I was one of the people who was click on Ultra Sign Up. And in the first 8 seconds, I got in. And
good for you.
We all broke Ultra Sign Up.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I managed to get in.
So you actually got in.
I got in.
So.
Yeah.
Had you done any Revival races?
No.
Well, that's good for you.
No, I had zero ticket. Well, there were no tickets.
Right.
I got in. And so to answer your question, I think it's the accessibility by the general public. And so there are people out there who are, remember how I said that there used to be 2 different tranches of people who would get into ultra running.
Right.
There were the road runners who decided
hikers.
to slow down, and then the hikers. I see a third column of folks that maybe haven't really been doing either, but decide I'm going to do one of these races. I'm going to do Cocodona.
We had a number of them on this program.
Yeah.
People who never ran before they were 40.
Yeah. Well, see, and I was a hiker before.
Yeah.
And I found out about the Wasatch 100 in an airport shuttle on the Wasatch front, where somebody telling me about this race that went from Kaysville to wherever it went at the time. It was Midway. It kept changing a lot. It's kind of stabled out recently. But I thought, I really want to do that. At the time, I was a really serious mountain biker. But I was also a very serious hiker. So I kind of saw myself in that. But I wasn't couched to 250. Yeah. I wasn't couched at that point.
But say Lucia Leonard, you may have met her at some point. Dion Leonard wrote Finding Gobi.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lucia, I met Lucia in the Race Across Scotland. I think she's done close to 20 200-mile races.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't run at all until she was 40. She literally started running. She was, as she describes herself, she weighed about 200 pounds and she smoked and she worked, in restaurants. And she just turned her life around and became a really, incredibly strong and admired 200-miler.
Well, and
she's done more than Dion has.
Well, so here's the thing. Yeah, here's the thing about that. So if you have somebody, like, I kind of consider myself, I definitely wasn't one of the road runners who decided to run trail, because I was a swimmer, like you said earlier in the podcast. And here I am, 28-year-old dude who didn't run in high school, is not Brian Beckstead or Golden Harper, who ran and crushed things in college. You know, Golden, I would always see when Golden was at BYU before he founded Ultra, you know, he was always talking about you doing this, doing that with the NC2As. And Golden was a great runner for BYU back in the day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I watched them as they developed this concept of the flat shoe, and then off they went to Ultra. But I wasn't one of those folks. And their dad, Golden's dad, Hawk, who owned the Runner's Corner in Orem.
Okay.
You know, I asked, you're going to love this. This is, and Jamil, if you're listening, you're going to crack a smile at this. I asked Hawk one day, how come you're not putting, he would always, you go in and you have a big screen on his big screen TV in the shop. And it was always showing 1,500 meter races, you know, whatever, 3,000 meter races and all this stuff that's all collegiate, maybe a little bit of cross country, but not much. I said, Hawk, why aren't you putting anything on the screen showing trail races? And Hawk said, because everybody in the shop would fall asleep.
Yeah.
You know, that was the mentality.
I think that was the mentality up until Cocodona, pretty much.
Right. And I'm saying, so Jamil's kind of broken the mold on that, saying, not anymore, Hawk. Well, and bless Hawk's heart. I love him to death. But that's, you know, he and I disagreed about that.
Well, it was a cool sport for those of us who'd been road runners. It's like, wow, this is a really fascinating cast of characters and very different from, for the most part, from road running. Now, I love road running, by the way, and I miss doing it as much as I did. But the characters are different in trail running. It's more of a connection to taking care of yourself rather than everything is planned out for you.
Well, okay, so what happened? Okay, let me give you, for instance, logistics. It's all about logistics.
Yes.
You don't win or finish, because I think finishing is the real goal for most people. You don't finish an ultra based upon tactics, and you don't finish it based upon strategy. You finish based upon logistics.
That's true.
In the 1942 invasion of North Africa, Patton was put in charge of the army. He relieved Frank Friedendahl because Friedendahl was incompetent. And that's another story. But when they loaded up his armored division materiel onto the ships, somebody had the brilliant idea to put all the tanks in one ship and all the ammunition in another. Now, think about that for a second, how much sense that makes. Number one, if one of the ships go down, you might as well have both go down.
Yeah, of course.
If they don't both go down, you still need to unload and then you need to assemble. The point is that logistics are everything in this sport. And there is a very, very marked degree of self-sufficiency that needs to occur for people that are out on the trail. And that's one thing that really drives me crazy is people that are expecting the flags to be every 100 yards and stuff. And I'm sitting here saying, I think we should get rid of flags completely and make people rely on their watches, because then there's less impact on the stakeholders and there's less impact with the community and the environment. People don't get so pissed off at this stupid race because they don't see the flags and they don't even know it exists.
I think the Europeans are ahead of us in that. I really do.
I think they are.
When we did Scotland, we didn't have the race across Scotland. We didn't have any flags.
You just used your GPS.
And we also were required not just to have a compass. We had to have a manual compass and maps. And I thought, oh my God, of course I'd learned this in Boy Scouts, but I hadn't used this for a long time. So I actually, went to a class to refresh my orienteering skills. But the last night we were out, the cloud was so, it descended, the fog. And of course the weather Scotland is terrible nearly all the time. And the race was terrible. And we had more than 100 people DNF for trench foot. So I'm still recovering from trench foot myself. I lost 2 layers of skin on my left foot.
Yeah.
But the last night we were navigating. We had no choice because the mountains were so steep. We couldn't get a signal. We were using manual compasses, and there's no markings.
Yeah.
And we found the finish line in the fog, in the clouds.
Yeah. The first 5 Wasatches I did, I was carrying laminated maps and a compass because the manual said, or that wasn't a manual, it was a brochure you got in the mail. It was before the internet that said this is what you should bring.
But the new entrants to the sport, a lot of them I think they sort of expect everything to be taken care of for them. I mean, that is to say, and I don't mean to cast such a broad brush, but I just want to say there are a lot of people who come from the hiking background, like you described. They already know about orienteering. They already know about the fact that you can be above timberline.
The 10 essentials.
Something goes wrong and you can die. I mean,
lightning.
A lot of bad things can happen to you up on the mountains or in the desert or whatnot. And then those who've come at it, from say road running, but have gotten into trail. I mean, we learned those skills too, and some of us knew them already. But the folks who are just getting off the couch, I've seen this happen time and again at longer trail races. They just honestly don't know the conditions that they're dealing with. They don't realize how bad it can get quickly.
Yeah,
we had an incident with a runner. It was a human potential running race down in Kuchara, down to the west of Walsenburg, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bad, the race was in June, but it was a very bad mixed hail thunderstorm with then eventually snow.
Yeah.
And a runner who didn't have the experience just got off course. And I mean, they had to do the full search and rescue plan to find that runner. And, there were so many precautions that could have led that person to not go off course. I mean, even having a compass, even having the ability to have a Garmin or something to attract, some kind of rescue, which, I run above my house with a Garmin InReach every morning.
Yeah.
Just in case.
I have the one that has the InReach built into the watch.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I have the little device, the mini.
Yeah.
And I don't leave home without it. It doesn't matter if I can see my house down below. I've been stalked by a mountain lion up there. I had last year, I didn't know I was allergic to having 27 wasp stings in under 30 seconds. I mean, I thought it was fun. I've been stung by lots of things. But I had a swarm. I stepped on an underground yellow jacket nest, and I was swarmed.
That hit us at Wasatch last year. There were about 40 of us that got nailed multiple times.
I have an EpiPen now with me in case it ever happens again, because I ended up in the ER. I barely got home. So, and I'm glad I had the InReach so somebody could find me.
Yeah.
So,
well, this is interesting.
But I'm not sure that people are taught or they understand that you can get hurt even with inside of your house, depending where you live.
The manuals, I think, do a pretty good job of saying, like at Cocodona or at the destination trail races, this is a graduate level event.
Yeah.
This is blah, blah, blah. I wonder how seriously people are taking that based upon what we've seen. There is what I consider to be an irreducible cohort of folks that just show up unprepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've probably seen it a lot at your roles.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. It's some amazing stuff that you wouldn't believe is actually happening until you hear the stories. Joel Gatt, who's one of my really good friends, who's provided logistical support to both Aravipa and also to Destination Trail, and he's a jack of all trades. He's seen it all, and he's been behind the desk, and he's been behind the search lamp, as it were. I mean, the first year that I ran Bigfoot,
mm-hmm.
the first year I got into the aid station, and there was a missing runner that her tracker was staying still, which is always a bad sign.
Yeah,
and my wife's a ham. I'm a ham radio operator. My son's a ham radio operator. He was on crew.
Good for you.
And those two, I said, I came in exhausted. I just finished Click-a-Tat. That was a 73-hour finish, but I was pooped. It was dark. And as soon as they said we got a missing runner, I looked at Jill and I said, all right, forget about me. You're both ham radio operators. Take your radios. Check in with net control. Here's the talk-in frequency. It was like boom, 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 boom. And it was just how I'm wired. And that's always how I've been wired. And the Army helps. I mean, yeah, I've been through all that training and I deployed to a combat zone. And so you have to have some understanding of trying to stay alive. But I really wonder whether people are really logistically prepared. Even to the point, I'm a huge believer, and I even started a business on this. And my son was the CEO, but he's the submariner, and now he's under the North Atlantic. And we've kind of put a pause on it. But a way to try to get people to get the courses into their watches, because they see the barrier to entry as a technical problem, and so they won't do it. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people just take wrong turns on course, and if they just had it in their watch, it would chirp at them.
Yeah,
but it's a form.
I love that feature, by the way.
Yeah, it's a form of good for you. It's a form of cognitive bias.
Yeah,
we assume that everybody knows what we know, so I assume that if I go into a race and I have like 15 different hacks that I do every time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wear a breathe right, and I have a handkerchief. A handkerchief that by the end of Cocodona was completely covered with bloody dried boogers. I'm sorry to be graphic, but what would I have done without that?
Yeah, exactly right.
Get it all over your hands, and then it's all over your shorts. My wife taught me that hack.
Yeah,
I have so many hacks.
I do that too, by the way.
And one of those hacks is I carry more than one watch with the course in it, and it's going all the time.
I always do.
And
I always carry an extra
blows
watch.
my mind that people don't do that. You spend how many thousands of dollars either in lost time or in gear or whatever, and you show up to the race with something that can ensure that you will not lose time in getting lost, and you end up getting lost and losing 2 hours. And, with all due respect to everybody who's ever done it, I've taken a wrong turn and had someone whistle me back after 50 yards. But my watch would have told me if I'd gone a little further. I still would have lost time, but maybe not as much.
Yeah.
So even I've gotten caught in it. But to get more than that far off course makes zero sense to me.
So we could keep talking forever, probably. In fact, and I would actually really like that, or at least listening to you would be.
We just have to go on a run together and start.
I'm looking forward to that.
Recording.
So I'm looking forward to that. So, but I have to ask you just one more question before we maybe end for the day, and that is Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, famously quoted Nietzsche, and it was once you know your why. I'm paraphrasing it, but a man who knows his why, or a person who knows his why, can endure almost anyhow. And I guess I wanted to ask you what your why is. Why do you spend so much time? Why have you spent so much time trail running at very great distances? What is that about? What is your why? Why do you do it? Do you pray? Is it something else?
Well, I would regard myself as a spiritual person. And for me, I have, this is not anything private. It's obviously personal information, but it's not something that I hide from people. But I am diagnosed ADD, and I'm probably on the spectrum. Never been diagnosed with that, but that is a trait that runs in my family. And I didn't realize this until I talked to another dear friend of our family who's also on the spectrum. And she said, it's just kind of like a disability where you have to get out into nature and you need to decompress. It's your way of dumping heat, dumping mental heat. Those of you who've either watched the movie or read the book, Hail Mary, I highly recommend it, but there is a character in there that needs to dump heat. And that's the only way it can live. And to me, it's a way of mentally dumping heat. And so it's perfectly encapsulated by John Moore's The Mountains Are Calling and I Must Go. What does that mean, I must go? Or why did you climb the mountain? Because it is there, at that Mallory. Those are different instantiations of the same exact thing. You can go back to Schopenhauer, The World as Will and Representation, and say that, it's because of the drive that we have, whatever. It gets philosophical at that point. But I do believe that it's almost like going into a REM state for me, where I can reorganize my brain and thoughts. Now, I am not one of these folks that is a purist that goes out and listens to the cicadas. I do listen to the cicadas. I've learned from my son, always have a butt out, because I've been bitten by a rattlesnake. And my son was almost taken out by a train when he was out running and didn't realize the train was coming, because he'd gone over those train tracks dozens of times. And this time he had a butt out and he heard the train coming. Yeah. He stopped and watched it go by.
Yeah.
So I always have a butt out.
Where did the snake bite you, by the way?
On the ankle. It was in Mill Creek Canyon in Utah.
And what happened as a result of that?
Dry bite.
Wow.
Dry bite. I was perfectly fine.
Did it hurt?
No. In fact, I didn't know it had bitten me.
Wow. How did you figure it out? Did you see the fang holes afterwards, or what? How did this?
Yeah, I did a complete body check. So I looked everywhere. It was in Mill Creek. It was a warm night because there had been thunderstorms the night before, so it was cloud cover, nature's heat lamps, right? And so something I learned from an old avalanche forecaster named Tom Kimbrough, bless his heart, but I learned a lot from him. We all have mentors. Anyway, and we learn our craft. We learn what I tell my children is called trailcraft. And you have to be good at trailcraft, as we were talking about before. But
absolutely, it
was warmer. I really wasn't paying attention because I always ran in the morning, and snakes really aren't an issue. They're sluggish. Well, it was 10 degrees warmer than normal.
Yeah.
And it was a small Great Basin rattler that was coiled by the side of the trail. And I'm pretty certain I stepped on it. And so it bit me. But it was a defensive bite, and they don't like to expend their venom. And so I didn't know I was bit. So I looked on both my calves. I thought, okay, I must be lucky. And I said, you might want to pull your sock down all the way to the level of your shoe to make sure. And right was clear, and left was like, oh crap. So
what did you do?
I went down to I was a mile from the car. So I fast walked back to the car and drove myself to St. Mark's Hospital there in Salt Lake, where my wife was practicing medicine.
Okay, I know where that is.
And she, I checked myself into the ER, and I said, hey, I've been bitten by a rattlesnake. And the ER triage was like, oh, wow, this is a problem. We need to get you in there. And it was funny because when I was waiting for the ER doc to show up. I called my wife, said, I'm down in the ER. She was up at the 3rd floor. She comes rushing down. Oh my gosh. I think it's fine. I did 45 minutes post-bite. I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's not swelling. It's not doing anything. It's staying exactly the same. So she's sitting there, and the ER doc walks in, and he looks at her. And he knows she's the colorectal surgeon. So if there's an ER problem with colon or rectum, she's there. So he looks at her, then he looks at me, then he looks at her. He said, you're here for a snake bite? Where did it bite you?
Oh, my word.
So anyway, to go to your...
No, and I appreciate... Thank you for telling us about that. I had a really close call with a coiled rattlesnake last summer, and I had a friend roughly the same time who got bit by one in the ankle. And it's been a real problem for her.
Well, you see, if they're envenomated, then it causes all kinds of problems. Allergic reaction, the anti-venom...
Nerve damage also.
Yes, and the anti-venom can be more problematic than the actual venom. In certain situations, it can be a system-wide reaction. Anyway, long story short, I do believe it's just a way a lot of us that do this sport are wired. We need to be out there. And I do spend a lot of time learning things. Like I do my weekly reading, like all my podcasts, Hard Fork, Scaling Laws, Lawfare, the Cyberwire podcast, Caveat, Hacking Humans. These are all professional podcasts. Are really good.
Oh, yeah.
I don't listen to running things when I run. I listen to professional things.
I don't either. It's interesting. I was thinking as you were talking, I just finished Dan Senor's book, The Genius of Israel. And he has a chapter about, you talked about, you think you might be on the spectrum. There's a chapter in that book about how the Israeli Defense Forces initially did not want in the IDF persons who are on the spectrum. And then someone figured out, well, wait a second, that's messed up. We can actually benefit in a gigantic way if we're able to find a way to work with men and women and have them serve in the IDF, which is in Israel is it's very essential to be in the IDF. For a lot of cultural, social, business, on and on and on. You need to be in the IDF. And so now it's venerated within the military because they have so many special units that are based around people who are on the spectrum and that are doing extraordinary things that others are not able to do. Yeah. And they've really made it into an integral part of the IDF. And he has a chapter on this in that book. And it made me think about the fact that, when you're out there, I would never have been listening to something like this. I don't have time, except that that day I was running for 4 hours. Yeah. And I was so excited.
You got sucked into it.
I was like, this is fascinating. I'm reading and learning about something I know nothing about. At the same time, I'm going up and down the mountains. Yeah. And I think I look forward to the nature, of course, too. But I'm also looking forward a lot of times to what I'm going to learn, whether it's professional or if it's just reading like that, where I'm trying to learn something totally new.
Yeah, like tonight, there's a dump on Lawfare every Monday morning, and then
Lawfare I listen to as well.
Yeah, my Monday evening run, I'll listen to it. Say what's going on with the Supreme Court today.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So anything else you want to say before we bid adieu to each other?
No, I it's interesting to watch the sport evolve. I hope we keep our mirth. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing I think that is the undercurrent of ultra running and trail running is the fact that there's a lot of mirth, that there's a lot of, I hope you're really enjoying yourself out here. You deserve everything you get. The old John Molmer, who's an old Wasatch maven, he used to teach me all these things. A good sense of humor is you have to have it in these races. And if we're all, here's the thing.
What's the funniest thing you've ever seen at an ultra? The funniest. Is there one thing that is the funniest thing you've ever seen?
Oh my gosh, you challenged me with that. There's so many things that I've
just
seen
pick
that are
one.
funny.
Pick one that's funny.
I'll pick one is when Walter ran by in his underwear.
It was just his underwear, right?
Yeah, just his underwear, and I try to make things fun I do a lot of singing, and I think other people find that to be hilarious. I once got kicked out of an aid station because I was singing too much, and they realized you're recovered, you're no longer dehydrated, get out of our aid station.
You just stop singing.
Yeah. So, it's, I'll think of it as I'm leaving the podcast today, what the funniest thing is that I've probably ever seen. But I remember my very first race. I came into the Scotts Pass aid station, mile 70 at Wasatch, and Richard Randall and John Wolmer were working in the aid station. Grizz Randall, who got his name because he used to compare. The reason we do ultras is we no longer have grizzly bears. If we had grizzly bears, we'd fight grizzly bears. But since they're all gone, we have to do ultras. That was on Channel 5 at KSL in Salt Lake, and it's infamous now. Grizz Randall said that. He's working the aid station. He walked up to me, and he grabs my thigh right behind my knee and says, "How you doing, Phil?" I'm like, "Ah!" It's the mirth.
It's the mirth, yeah.
It's if without the mirth, we're nothing. And I think that really distinguishes the ultra running community from others, where they are able to not take themselves too seriously. And it manifests itself in different ways. Like, for example, bad ultra running advice on the Facebook page, people making fun of the sport because you can't take yourself too seriously in the sport. No,
it's so funny. Pamela Chapman Markle, is a real legend in the sports, and, multiple Badwater finishes. And I saw her she had just had major surgery, and she's come back. She's I think 71, and I saw her in the Badwater, the Cape Fear race it's a 51-mile race, mostly on the beach in North Carolina, an island called Bald Island, and she came running by in a ballet tutu, a lime green ballet tutu, and she got to the sand and she took off her running shoes. She's running in her bare feet, and she of course passed me with no problems whatsoever. Yeah. And it was so funny. And she blew me a kiss or something when she came by. So, and she was doing that to everyone. It is the mirth, and there's so many incredibly funny moments. And that is a good thing that you see in a race like Cocodona too, which is that, there's the old school, which is funny, but Cocodona's, there are a lot of really funny things about Cocodona. The live stream had a lot of hilarious moments in it. So
I've got to go back and watch it. Yeah.
It's just absolutely extraordinary. So I hope we don't ever lose that. And I think we probably won't. So, well, Phil, I just want to thank you for coming in. I want to give a shout out to Jill. I've not ever met Jill, but the way that you have talked about her in various settings, other podcasts and so on, that your marriage is really an inspiration. I mean, the fact that you two have supported each other for so long in so many really profound ways, including running together and crewing each other and supporting each other and your family, it's really is an inspiration. So, and it means a lot to a lot of us. And thank you for your leadership in the sport and for everything that you do. And thanks for your service to our country.
Well, I'll say the same thing to you in the sense that I heard your podcast. I thought, I got to meet this guy. So it's been a great treat. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. So happy trails.
Thank you.